Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And if I look at the attendee numbers for those 49 that I don't know, I am Nick Chube, and I'm fulfilling the position of training coordinator within IOPSA. On our calendar, it says business development, but I am sure you will also find that this session could be seen as a self-development component that we will be busy at. In terms of kicking off, we would say never stop learning, because life never stopped teaching us. And I'm sure that even in this lockdown period that we have, there is a vast number of aspects and concepts and things within our life, personal, our life business-wise, and I am sure our life country-wise, that we are going to be taught a number of things, how to proceed specifically post our lockdown component. Now, within training and development, it is a complex component and it is expensive. You will always hear there's challenges when it comes to how do we finance this training component, but you are very fortunate to have an organization such as IOPSA that helps you to navigate and reduce this complexity. And if one follows the due processes, policies, and procedures, which there is plenty in our life, then you would find that even that expense can be turned around into a positive income. And there is, if you follow those procedures, you will find that there's even a more than just covering the cost component within this component as far as training is concerned. Now, if we have a look, I said it's a complex component. If we look at the different building blocks, you will see what I mean by what is the building blocks about. I'm going to start off with the IOPSA building block there on the right-hand side. And one of the questions that we need to make sure we all understand is IOPSA is not something outside you. IOPSA is you, and in actual fact, you are making up IOPSA. And if we stick to that focus, then we will see when we get to later on why I am saying that IOPSA without its members, without its participants, it will not be able to function, and it will be a non-existing organization. IOPSA also created that center block, the Plumbing Industry Registration Board, or as we know it, PIRB, which is the professional body that registers the qualified plumbers post this training process that we're referring to. It's also well necessary to note that the plumbing as a trade, and there's 127 of these trades in our country, is the only trade at present that has a functional professional body that performs this specific function to register and certify individuals that has a trade qualification. And that is something that you as individuals through the IOPSA arm can be very, very proud of. And there's quite a number that is following our footsteps in terms of this specific component. Then if we move on and we have a look at probably the biggest partner, and when we consider biggest, we can use numbers, we can use rand values and all the rest of it. It is the Department of Higher Education that establish all these specific components to make it go around. Yes, we've started with training within the Department of Labor. That has been transferred to the Department of Higher Education and Training, and they are presently the godfather moving along. They have established this one on the next one, the greenish one, the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, also known as the QCTO, which is a quality council similar to what we have Umalusi, that quality controls our general education. And then we have the higher education board that quality control the training that takes place at universities or institutions of higher learning. Whatever they control and register, it is then kept as a register of qualifications at SAQA, the SAQA, which then has all the qualifications, and each one of them has a ID number on there. So if you have a qualification and you want to know if it's authenticated, if it has a serial number, then you know it is, and you know it's quality control within the process. Linked to that, we have a NQF, or a National Qualification Framework, which is also an act that ensures that everything takes place according to these policies, procedures, and rules that we have. And that's where, when you go and analyze a qualification and it says plumbing, you'll see the NQF level, which gives us at level 4 presently, meaning that NQF level 1 is basically spell the word yes. But as you move up to level 2 or level 3 or level 4, it becomes a little bit more complicated. And at level 4, it would not only ask you how to spell yes, but how would you be using it and where would it stand for, and then you'll have to philosophize a little bit around that. That's if you move up on this NQF level component. You will also see that within the SAQA document, there is credits. Now, the credits means that it gives you the volume. Now, presently, our plumbing qualification is at 360 credits, where the previous old qualification was 160 credits. Now, the credits gives you an indication of the volume of work that is linked or put in towards this specific curriculum. Then if we move on, and this qualification, the Quality Council and industry and the registration board has all done their work to carry on. We have our skill development providers, the SDPs, here on the right-hand bottom corner of our screen, that execute these specific components. And after completion, we all know the trade test, which is then governed on the left-hand side, the National Artisan Moderation Body, or NMBA, that in actual fact controls the specific trade tests. Now, within our plumbing qualification, we have 2 areas of specialization presently, which is registered with the QCTO, and that is our solar water heating and our heat pump qualification, which is an additional qualification. You will see that it's at an NQF level 4, both of them, but they only have a credit of 67, which means that the volume is much less than that of the full plumbing qualification. Now, because NAM, as the artisan body, they can't manage more than 127 various trade tests that has to be conducted at various times, the QCTO then went through a process to appoint assessment partners in terms of these additional qualifications outside the designated trade area. So IOPSA have been appointed as the assessment quality partner, or the AQP, for that solar and heat pumps. And we will then conduct the trade tests for those 2 qualifications. So the skills development providers will conduct the training, they'll prepare the individual, and then when he is registered, IOPSA will then be responsible to conduct, execute, and assess, and then certify the individuals with a recommendation through to the QCTO, who then issues the actual certificate. IOPSA will not issue that actual certificate that we have. Now, with all this, if we go back and we see that IOPSA as an organization is the link that we have within this specific process. We'll see that the curriculum, which is registered on SAQA, there's roughly about 70% of the content that has to be carried out by an approved employer. And I am emphasizing the word employer because within IOPSA, as employers, can you see the important function that we have to play within the training of plumbers for our industry? We'll also see that through the last 3 to 5 years, IOPSA have established themselves as an employer body of choice to form the link there between that building blocks, that's the department, the QCTO, NAM, and so forth, together with employers where we do, in actual fact, ensure that that 70% training takes place. But now comes the next component that is important for us as IOPSA members and as employers, and that is that we need to be ensuring that that training carries on fit for purpose. And only the employers would be able to tell us if we're going to train an individual to do A, B, or C, is that fit for the purpose of the employer? And I'm showing this for a specific purpose. As we move on, you will see that it is an important link that we have to strengthen and build upon. Now, to do this, we need to have input to ensure that this training remains relevant and up to date. And I am requesting you to please ensure that you participate within these surveys that we do, so that in actual fact at the end, when we have a product, it is fit for purpose, it is relevant for our specific day challenges. And as you can see, if we started in January 2020 and we're now in April 2020, there's a number of things that have changed that we have to adapt to ensure that this training remains relevant for that specific component and trade that we have. IOPSA is also the driving force to ensure that this quality control takes place within the process. It is no use that we develop and we train and we quality control, but we are using non-technical individuals to do that specific quality control, as some of has happened in the past, specifically within our CETA setup. IOPSA continues to strive in improving and uplifting the standards of training delivery and the final trade test to certify competency. It is an important focus for IOPSA to ensure that we continue with that specific component. We'll also see that there is new developments that have came out a month or so ago, where there's a drive from the policy level, in other words, there from department and QCTO, that says, gentlemen, and they're not referring only to plumbing, but they refer to all trades and say, your present level of training, which our qualification is at level 4, it is a 3-year training program, should include a part qualification component. Now, when I refer to part qualifications, it means that we would have access to this plumber training at various levels. It could be at NQF level 1, it could be at 2, it could be at 3, or at level 4, doesn't matter. But the part qualifications would mean that you do the full plumber qualification in a number of parts, and if those parts are put together, then you will have a full qualification at the end, when you've combined all the different parts that you've done over a period of time. There is advantages, but there's also disadvantages that we have to look at. And that second component of this slide that says it will require a vast amount of debate and input from licensed plumbers and employers. And I appeal again, please participate in our surveys. Please view your viewpoints and give us your inputs. Because when we start developing these components, we need to ensure that we have listened to each and every one's input that helps us to build and develop these part qualifications in such a way that it is for the benefit of the industry and not the benefit of somebody sitting in an office and said, listen, there's a part qualification and now it will work. Those things cannot work top down. It needs to be from bottom up, so that what happens at the workplace and work face, that is included in the development of these specific components. The national structure of IOPSA is also being transformed to ensure that we have a sustainable organization with a key building block, which is training, which we are talking about today. And you will see that at your regional structures that, yes, we focused a vast amount of time on technical components and technical knowledge and the science codes and all the rest of those specific components. But we have to expand our training component as well at regional level to ensure that we talk collectively throughout the country to ensure that this works for us within the training component. Now, in saying that, I have selected one topic in terms of how are we moving forward, where have we been, and I am putting this as a focus point as far as the future is concerned. When we say a trade test is done, well, we should. Presently, individuals go to a trade test center and there is certain appointed assessors stroke trade test officials. They conduct the test and they certify the individual, and then there's a paper verification. My future would look like that we have a panel of assessors to assess and adjudicate that final result. In other words, there won't be just one trade test official, there would be a minimum of two at least. And the question will come, well, how do we do that? One of the lines of thinking I have was that we could register our present group of compliance auditors as trade test officials. Instead of having a waste of material at the trade test center and conduct the trade test, and after the trade test is we dismantle what has been done, have a look at on-the-job assessment that takes place. This additional team can also form part of this assessment panel that can conduct the final assessments. That is a line of thinking, and I am sure that it can, in actual fact, move on. In terms of my closing statement, can I just say that please remember, Nelson Mandela said, no country can really develop unless its citizens are educated. Let's take this period to think, but as we move on, let's focus on training to ensure that we are equipped for the day of tomorrow. I thank you very much for your time and your attendance.
Thank you very much, Nick, for this informative presentation. There are only two questions from the audience. The first question is there space or possibilities to move up on the NQF level as a plumber? And what is the qualification threshold qualification-wise in the plumbing industry?
Yes, there is scope. Presently, the NQF level 4 qualification is the only qualification that is registered. IOPSA did go through a process last year. We've received proposals to have a training program for what is then called the Master Plumber Training Program, and that would be at NQF level 6. In other words, that qualification would in actual fact be then moving up in terms of the NQF level that is presently only at 4. So once that is done, hopefully that would kick off in the middle of the year, July or so this year, and then that pilot, after it's been completed, that formal qualification will then be available for individuals to follow.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, the new plumbing qualification carries 360 credits. Is this qualification equivalent to a degree?
That question arises many a time. That if we go onto on the NQF framework, you will see that a degree would be at NQF level 4, the plumbing qualification would be at NQF level 4, but the only difference would be the volume of work that's done. So in other words, our plumbing qualification presently carries 360 credits. There is the next move that should still take place in the year 2020 to up the credits to 540. And if you go and have a look at the degree, you would find that the degree centered around 800 or 1,200 credits on that specific component. And that's where the difference comes in. And it is then perceived that a degree is higher than what a trade qualification is. And as a tradesperson, I can assure you that we also are working very hard to change the perception of the consumer stroke, the individuals or the broad public, that the trade should be in actual fact be higher than a degree. And one can take various arguments why and how do you say that, but you can have a look at different components if you want to weigh up, is a trade better than a degree and a degree better than a trade. But on NQF level, it's the same. Volume-wise, it could be more.
Thank you for that. We have a statement from one of the attendees. The statement is, thank you, very informative. Good idea to maybe use existing PIRB inspectors to overview the trade test results. Could work well, I think. Okay, and then the next question is, why penalize and demote a plumber with CPD points not allowing to work properly?
Can I just repeat the question? Why penalize?
Why penalize and demote a plumber with CPD points not allowing to work properly?
Okay, if my understanding of the question is correct, in terms of our professional body, and there is rules from QCTO and SAQA that says this is how a professional body should operate. So therefore, to maintain a license, in other words, the individual comes with a qualification to the professional body, subject themselves to the rules and regulations of the professional body that says, yes, your entrance qualification, yes, you pass. Now you do the actual exam or entrance exam or board exam, if you want to call it. You've passed that, and now you are a licensed plumber. The next requirement is you need to maintain relevancy in your trade test that you have done or your trade that you've selected. Hence, you have to prove continuously developing yourself, and that's done through the CPD point system. And then if you don't meet that specific requirements, it is assumed that you haven't kept yourself up to date, you haven't kept relevant, and then you lose the license and you move back to the qualification. The qualification can never be taken away from an individual, but the license to operate can. And that's what happens if you are then removed from license to qualified plumber.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, my trade test says it is a section 28. How do I do NQF levels?
If you have a trade test which has a red seal, that certificate in itself is equated to an NQF level 4. Although you've done the section 28, you've done that then through the process that you've worked, you've proved that you have worked, and you've then completed a trade test. That trade test as the final exam is at NQF level 4. And it needs to be a red seal. Whether the previous qualification prior to this new qualification had also a level 4, but it did not have a trade test as a requirement to obtain the certificate. And that does create a bit of an issue. And unfortunately, the guys or the individuals and the powers to be that generated that qualification did not think it 100% through. And IOPSA is presently addressing it because individuals that have qualified without the trade test at NQF level 4 and individuals that have qualified with a trade test at NQF level 4 is assumed to be at the same level within the industry and within the professional body. But there is employers and bodies that do not equate it on the same, and they only accept the trade test and not the learnership qualification.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the next question is, where can we find out about the Master Plumber course? And how many credits will a Master Plumber course have?
Those details we will publish as soon as we have finalized it, hopefully within the next month or two.
Okay, and then the next question is, please could you recommend a accredited training facility in Port Elizabeth for heat pump or solar geyser? Alternatively, is there an online option to give me full qualification required for such installations?
Okay, one now needs to be careful in terms of, let's just distinguish between a qualification and a designation. Qualification means it is a qualification that is issued through either the CETA or the QCTO, and it was conducted by an accredited training provider. Now, the accredited training providers and approved training providers is listed on the IOPSA website, and one needs to have a look at it. And you will see that maybe they would advertise in PE that it can be conducted by approved training provider A on that and that day, and if there's not enough numbers, they cancel it or they postpone it. So one needs to have a look at what is presently there, and if there's a specific need, I suggest that we talk to our local chairperson and then express the need and see can something specifically be arranged if there is not a continued one. But just have a look on the website of these approved training providers and then double check the difference between a qualification and a designation.
Okay, and then the next question is, we have a plumber that recently completed his trade test successfully. He already qualified for solar with IOPSA with a solar pilot. What is needed for him to register with PIRB?
So if he qualified as a plumber, that would give him the option to then register as a licensed plumber. To issue COCs for solar, the requirement be tick the box in terms of plumber, and then he needs to complete either the qualification for solar or the designation of solar that he has to complete. And if he's got both of those on his designations in PRB, he would then be able to issue the COCs of solar. It's not a requirement to do the solar post-plumbing. Could be done in different times, but you will not be able to do solar and solar COCs unless you have the qualification and licensed as a plumber.
Okay, and then the next question is, what about heat pump and gas installations? Help me in this regard, where to get accredited training providers.
Same thing is we need to have a look at the website at IOPSA in terms of heat pump, and in terms of gas installations. That Institute of Gas Installers is operating within Kaya Sand in Randburg, and IOPSA have had some various discussions to see how we can take hands to ensure that in terms of gas installations, we follow the same procedure as they have with the 10 installations, and only after you've been certified post those 10 installations, you become a registered qualified gas installer, which allow you then to issue a certificate of compliance for that specific gas installation.
Okay, and then the next question is there any way to better myself and grow higher within PIRB without the years required behind me?
Well, look, my first component of the answer would be there is nothing to replace experience. However, to better yourself, there is a vast amount of programs, training programs, webinars, etc., that can lead to your improvement, that would have to be focused on the area of where you operate. It's no use operating theoretically obtain a qualification, and then you never practice that part of the qualification again. Then you sort of lose it. So it's something that you need to have a look in terms of your self-development. Where's the focused area? And then from there, have a look at the programs that helps you to uplift yourself to become the specialist within that area of operation.
Okay, and then the next question is, so if you are a registered plumber for 48 years already, will you lose your license and not be able to operate your business of 48 years if you don't have enough CPD points?
Can't lose your business, but you can lose your license to operate because you do not have, or you haven't accumulated sufficient CPD points. However, in stating that, I think it is not a question that you will lose it. It's a question that you haven't applied your mind sure that through your normal operations, you can accumulate sufficient CPD points to meet the minimum requirements and then continue. It is not just only attending a webinar to accumulate or get CPD points on that specific component. So one needs to look at the menu, and you will see by attending IOPSA meetings, subscribing or receiving Plumbing Africa magazine, there's a vast number of those actions and things that you can do that you will earn CPD points.
Okay, and then the next question is relatively long. The question is, I was for years in the medical field, which started with CPD. There you received X CPD for working in the field, let's say 4. The rest you needed to gain through seminar, lectures, etc. It was deemed when working in the field and belonging to the body that you gain certain knowledge. Why does the plumbing not do the same?
I don't think we're not doing the same. If you're a member of IOPSA, you would attend meetings, and through that, you will then gain CPD credits in terms of that. So, for example, if you attend a meeting, you have 2 credits or 3 credits, depending on what component was in that specific meeting. If there's 3 meetings in a year, that gives you 6 CPD credits just by attending. Being a member of IOPSA, serving on a committee, doing the actual trade or the Plumbing Africa magazine. If you participate in the training component, you take in an apprentice, you get 5 CPD credits. So there's a number of things that can be done in terms of that. And yes, the PRB component is not something that is cast in stone. It's something that continuously develop and evolve with these specific challenges that we do have. And presently, we have the best that we have made to now, but I can assure you in a year's time, you will see that there is changes for the betterment of that. And your inputs can only help.
Okay, and then we have a quick statement from one of the attendees for a previous question. The statement is, you are not losing your license to operate, only temporarily losing your ability to issue COCs.
Correct.
Okay, and then the next question is, I have a training at Watersmith for heat pump and solar. What is that qualification?
You have a qualification at Watersmith. So therefore, the certificate was issued as a competency certificate, which was then done in the terms of the old CETA qualification. In other words, heat pump was not a formal qualification registered, but it was within that scope. And the solar, if I can recall correctly, it was 24499 unit standard qualification. Now, both of those is, if it's a competency certificate, is accepted at PRB for you to register with those 2 specialized programs, and if you are a qualified plumber, you will be able to then install and issue COCs for those 2 areas of specialization. Not sure if I've answered the question that was asked.
Okay, and then the next question is, it's also relatively long. The question is, if we do not acquire enough CPD points for the year and are demoted to qualified plumber, will we have to do the plumber test again, or just accumulate the correct amount of CPD points to be upgraded again?
I'm not 100% au fait with the actual rules presently with PRB, and can we ask that we address that directly with them just to get clarification on that?
Okay, will do. And then the next question is, what about municipality employees registered with PIRB? How are they assisted in terms of points and recognition?
So if you're employed in a local authority, then maybe they don't install geysers and things, but they still carry on either with water or with drainage. So in that specific area, there should be specific components that they can do. And again, I think one needs to have a look at the specific municipality with the specific experiences and see if we can identify if there's specific gaps that then can be assisted with to ensure that you continue gaining your experience in that specific area of specialization.
Okay, and then the next question is, during COVID-19, will there be a little bit of leniency to obtaining CPD points in due time?
I think again that we should ask PRB to get that specific component, but from my perspective, I have this calendar of CPD points being accumulated, having webinars that in actual fact I think we will overshoot the mark rather than to undershoot the mark. But let's have a look what PRB has to say on that specific component.
Okay, and then the next question is, surely IOPSA and PIRB can do webinars for free, seeing that we already pay to be registered and pay for COCs?
Well, look, presently the webinars that is being done during this lockdown period, the vast number of them are for free. But it's like IOPSA. I'm not sure if everybody would be happy if we take their membership fees and we fund these webinars. So again, there's a budget, there's a policy that we have to follow, etc. And if we go back to where I said we need to see this as an investment in ourselves, and when we spoke about training, we spoke about there's an expense. There's very little free training and education. Somewhere along the line, somebody has to pay for it.
Okay, and then the next question is, I've been a registered plumber for 48 years and regular train apprentices from the likes of African Skills Training Academy. If I am demoted to a qualified plumber, will I have to stop training the apprentices?
When we go and say, do you participate as a host employer in terms of an approved employer, your approval as an employer was not linked to being licensed or qualified plumber. It was linked to being a qualified plumber. So the answer would be, if you're still qualified, then the answer is yes, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is, are the solar installers allowed to do insurance claims?
Well, insurance claims is usually controlled by that specific insurance company. To get onto a panel, you need to be approved, and usually they would have criteria in terms of that specific component. And one of them would be you have to be a qualified solar installer to do that, in my mind. I'm not sure whether they would allow you to do solar installations if you are not qualified. Because remember, solar installation requires a COC. Now, again, it varies from insurance company to insurance company, but in terms of the process, you should be a qualified solar installer to do an installation.
Okay, and then we just have two statements with regards to the webinars. The first statement is, there is 3 webinars a day for CPD points, all for free at the moment, 1.25 points per day. And then the next statement, with the amount of webinars available during lockdown, it will be easy to obtain enough CPD points as required by PRIB.
We need to do the maths, I think.
Nick, if I can just jump in, and thanks. I think you've answered, the questions very well. And I think it's very pertinent in terms of just getting an understanding, going back to what the guys are talking about with regards to, sorry, my name's Steve Brown, Operations IOPSA. But I think the key thing is for those in attendance today, is that in terms of CPD, certainly from IOPSA and PIRB side, we've seen the necessity to do it. So you can clearly see that there are 3 webinars a day during the lockdown period, which certainly, if you look at the points that are applicable to those, is certainly going to cover it. If you go and have a look at, the webinars that are, and there's a cost to it, there's normally an outcome to that, where there's either a certification or a certificate that gets applied to that. Those actually carry a cost. But I would say, in terms of our Business 101, the Tech Talks on a Thursday, and others that are there, 90% of the webinars are actually free. They don't cost anything other than the time to be able to take and get that going. So if we look at the program in terms of what it is that you're required to do in terms of meeting your CPD, as Nick, you said earlier, is that, if you take it over your 12-month period in terms of what time you actually have to spend, and bearing in mind, this is to enrich and empower yourself. So therefore, you invest in yourself, and all of these webinars certainly do that and carry the points. But we hope that, what comes across there is that the guys learn. So, yeah, certainly achievable in terms of obtaining those points. And there really shouldn't be an area where the guys can't obtain it through the correct channels without too much inconvenience to themselves, if you want to call it that, if you're actually there to learn. Thanks, Nick. Sorry.
No problem. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, and yes, there are 2 more questions with regards to the cost. The first question is, why is plumbing COC costing 200 Rand, but an electrical COC only 20 Rand?
Again, please forgive me if I say I'm not in a position to give that answer. I think we should address that to PRB and see what the reason or the answer is.
Okay, and then the next question is there any funds available to help an assistant plumber, 15 years experience, to qualify? The cost is almost 20,000 Rand.
Look, if you have a look, IOPSA have advertised a number of positions in terms of bursaries to help and assist individuals. We tried to launch a program in terms of RPL specific for an individual that has previous experience and see how can we do. But the numbers of individuals putting their hands up and say, yeah, we want to and we need assistance was not just warranting the actual program to kick off and get off the ground. So we can again try and see, advertise, see how many guys are interested in the ARPL. Then IOPSA can go through the process to secure funding, and then we'll kick off with the program and conduct the ARPL process, which then will cover that quoted cost of 20,000, which to me is it's a bit high, and one needs to have a look at it, how we go about it. But let's have a look and see, can we put a project together to assist individuals that is in need. Please, when we kicked off, my email address was there. If you express your interest, I will make sure that we put it into our basket of these are the inquiries that we have. We see how we can go, and then we move forward by putting a project together.
Thank you for that, Nick. The last question for this session, before I end off, do our CPD points get allocated automatically once we complete the survey at the end of each webinar, or do we still need to complete the CPD form?
Steve, maybe you can just answer that gets off the table. As far as I know, the answer is yes, it gets allocated automatically because you've inserted your registration number.
Correct. So basically at the end of all the webinars, obviously you've logged in with your details, everything else that's on the system. At the end of each one of the webinars that's there, it basically brings up the survey, and then you would put your number in, and then you submit that, and automatically from there it goes through the system and is allocated. I think the one clear thing that needs to come out, but you as the plumber, just check up on your points. If you've attended all of these webinars over this particular time, and you've done your cigarette box accountancy and you've got 10 points or 5 points or whatever, then just go in and go and check it. I mean, shift does happen, in terms of where it is. So it's up to you, being the licensed plumber, to just go and check your points and see where you are. I know that, I'm engaged with Lorraine in terms of where this is to try and facilitate this and make it better and easier. But again, the responsibility lies with you, being the licensed plumber, to just go and check and make sure that your points are there. And there is records that you've attended. They have all of the recordings. They have all of the information that's there, the analytics, who was in the room, etc., and for how long. So all of that stuff and that stats is there to be able to check. But the onus, guys, is on yourself to just go and check and see where you are in terms of your CPD.